Hello everyone and welcome to the tavern. Just wanted to kind of do a quick talk about the announcements and revelations that have come out about Tomb Raider Shadow of Truth. Most of this information comes from the official site and from a Polygon interview. The game is being produced by Evil Hat Productions, who have made several other games, some of which are very popular. Most of their reviews are generally positive, though a lot of people who don't like their games seem to fall into the same category as me, being people who do not like the Fate system and its derivatives. Personally, I don't like how the Fate system creates characters without any kind of real stat block, and I especially hate how the Fate system is set up in a way where your Fate dice will basically prevent you from ever having a lose state in the game, and a game is not nearly as fun when you know you can't lose. If anything, that's rather boring. It might work as baby's first tabletop RPG, but frankly, anyone past the first grade would probably want a bigger challenge. Honestly, when it comes to IP, a tabletop game might not be the best option. Now, there have been good ones over the years, but for the most part, you fall into some major traps. For example, when you have an IP that is driven more by the character or characters, you can have things work out, such as the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game. If everyone knows the characters from the show, has a favorite character, you can put together a team and go off and have adventures that expand the world of Buffy and friends. However, this can also be a problem when you have a character-driven story like, say, Metroid, where everyone will want to play as Samus, and Samus rarely ever has any companions. And what you generally end up with is Samus plus a handful of randos. And they've done that before, and they are the two most hated games in the franchise. However, you also have the times when it's the world that could be a place to tell stories. For example, Star Trek is open enough, you could create a ship and then create the crew and have them go on adventures. Now, whether or not they interact with any of the known characters in the television series or novels is generally up to the DM. However, this can also be a problem. Lord of the Rings offers many opportunities for storytelling outside the adventures of the Fellowship. However, in the game Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, you're playing a group of randos trying to chase down and help out the Fellowship, which is not nearly as exciting or interesting as playing as the Fellowship. Now, regardless of the quality of that video game, I'm just pointing out the narrative issues that can occur when you're stuck into a larger universe. Now, world-driven and character-driven do not need to be mutually exclusive, and there are tabletop games that give you both options as well. However, Tomb Raider is a very character-driven video game. We are following Lara Croft. We want to play as Lara Croft, and we don't want to play as a bunch of randos who are traveling with Lara Croft. And that is a very large stumbling block that the creators of the game are going to have to contend with. In fact, I have actually taken on a character-driven game challenge myself when I made a homebrew of Silent Hill for Call of Cthulhu. For those interested in that project, I did a video years ago about my experiences making the game, and the link is in the description. But what's more important is what I learned when working in a more character-focused world. Thankfully, Silent Hill does have the opening for randos to come into the town and face the horrors, which is the route we decided to go with. But I had to limit how many players there were. In the end, I decided on 2, which made a few people disappointed, but it was the only choice I had to keep the tabletop experience in line with the video game. More than that, I had to personalize the experiences for the players. Silent Hill is built on the mental state and the experiences of those who enter the world. Therefore, I had to customize many things to make it work for those characters. Which means the game I made can't just be handed off to someone else to play, because it was so dependent on the player characters and what their stories were that I couldn't just throw in other characters and make it work. The one thing I was sure of while working on this project is I couldn't have this follow the Mason family, primarily because it would lead to so many other problems with setting up the game, which is something the people at Evil Hat are going to have to deal with when making the Tomb Raider tabletop game. Which brings me to our main topic. There's a few minor things I just want to get out of the way. The lead writer says he's a huge Tomb Raider fan, and I hope he is. I generally believe that. However, Evil Hat is also using a sensitivity reader, and we already know how they can ruin really good games. And then there's that artwork. Less said about that, the better, because, ugh. But the big issue I have is the rules. There are two main rules that have been brought up. The first is what they call moves, which I already hate the name of. But let me explain why. When you choose your character class, there will be a set of personal questions that apply to your character. These are the moves, and as you answer these questions, you get more growth dice, which as far as I can tell, seem to function like the fate dice, essentially preventing you from having a lose state in the game, unless you fail at answering your own personal questions. What this basically means is, while you're dungeon diving or exploring some old ruins, you're gonna have to go deal with your personal hang-ups. So essentially, every time you face a problem in the game, you're gonna have to go deal with your personal issues before you resolve the problem. So when you come across a trap, you have to wonder if you have a good enough relationship with your parents to disarm it. If you come across a puzzle, you're gonna have to wonder if you're over those insults your older brother used to say to you in order to solve the puzzle. And of course, my personal favorite, you come across an enemy, you gotta wonder, am I living up to my full potential before pulling out your two pistols and shooting that dinosaur? Because nothing makes a game more exciting like stopping the game to deal with your emotional baggage. Also, I don't think anyone wants to play an adventurer who's constantly questioning themselves and their abilities, because it isn't fun to play someone who has massive hang-ups and personal doubts. The goal of this system was to tie the actions you take to your character's personal beliefs, which isn't a bad thing, but the way it's being implemented sounds very clunky and sometimes outright stupid. But wait, there's more! That's right, there's another mechanic they've announced. And this mechanic is even dumber than the personal question mechanic because it doesn't even fit in the Tomb Raider universe. They have an alternate option instead of death. It's called the Shadow Self. Yes, you can fall to the dark side, something that we all know was a major component of the Tomb Raider storyline. In this state, your character basically becomes evil because they have so much self-doubt and can end up doing evil things. But don't worry, because your other teammates can talk you down. For example, Bill, you just killed all those other archaeologists to get that idol. Murder is bad and wrong. You should know better. Oh, you're right. I shouldn't have let greed take over my mind. I'm such a jerk, but now I know better. Murder is bad. And while this could be used as a way to get a character out of the game, in other words, if you have to quit playing, you could say, oh, my character decided to turn on the entire party and now I'm a boss fight, or something like that. But for the most part, this feels like a weird mechanic because, again, they don't want a fail state in their games. Look, I love Call of Cthulhu, but the sanity mechanic in Call of Cthulhu actually makes sense. It isn't because I have hang-ups about my mom or my dad or my cousin twice removed on my in-laws' side of the family. It's because I saw or experienced things no human should see or experience. The only positive I can really say about the information we have about the game is the simplicity of it can be a positive under certain circumstances, because it requires basically pencils, paper, a couple D6s, and the rule book. That can be very easy for transport, but I don't know how many people want to have a therapy session in the middle of their dungeon diving. Obviously, I'm not particularly hyped about this game, and I don't think anyone else should be either, unless they really, really love Tomb Raider and want something to give you a mediocre version of your video game experience. Tomb Raider isn't really designed for tabletop, and this kind of rule set doesn't emphasize the things that made Tomb Raider great, namely exploration, puzzle solving, fighting dinosaurs, and finding cool treasures. Sure, there might be treasure in this game, there might even be battles in this game, but it's never going to feel the same as playing as Lara and kicking some ass. And frankly, if you want to be an adventurer archaeologist, there are significantly better games you can play that give you a real challenge, some interesting scenarios, and overall a more rewarding experience. However, this is the early version. This is just minor notes from the creators, and they've already said that they're going to be putting out a playtest, and maybe the playtest will prove me wrong. Maybe it's misinterpreted in the articles I've read. And if that's the case, cool. I'm not certain if I actually will join this playtest because I don't know if I could talk anyone into playing the game with me. However, if you're doing the playtest and you would like the Dapper Bard as one of your players, I will gladly join your game and look over the rules so I can review it in a future video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.